Man, that's so interesting how I can see a past version of myself spending a bunch of energy judging somebody else. And I might even get tired from it. Might even get kind of like a little upset or angry, you know?
Yeah, it's a pattern. And I think even deeper than that, it's a pattern of community for a lot of people because we grew
Yeah.
up around other people that have the same patterns, and it was a way to communicate gossip, you know.
Man, I think that right there highlights the key benefit of working with you because now I can do this in my day to day of like, oh, we're having conditioned thought. But when I first started, I don't even think looking at me judging somebody else wouldn't be maybe like a something that I would want to change. You know, it's like, it's just something I do. It's something everyone does, or
It's normal, it's part of life.
it's normal. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me unhappy. But in reality, like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah, fuck
right.
it does.
And now for something completely different.
What's up, my brother? How you doing?
Hello, Phil. Thanks for having me on your podcast, man.
Dude, I'm so pumped to have you back. I think I talked to you recently or at some point in the recent months about how in the past I had this idea to have people come on and like record sessions with me and then do it down the road and have like a batch of people and do this one podcast where it showed everybody, but like it just hasn't happened, and that's fine. But every now and then I come across someone like yourself, also Anna, which you'll probably meet at some point. I had her on the podcast to talk about, just generally speaking, what it's like to work with me. I know that where we are, I know we've also had talks about content creation, and where we are with content creation, the idea is demonstrate, and we'll talk about you and in the content, a lot of the content you've done. I know it varies, but in the realm of gardening and planting, and growing vegetables or whatever it is, like you document the process, you demonstrate the process, right? And so what better way than long form content, just talking to someone who's actually worked with me.
Yeah, man. No, for sure, for sure. It's interesting how these two things overlap. The
Yeah.
content creation, the the sort of subconscious rewiring, the subconscious exploring, which we've
Mhm.
been working on for time flies, man. I think we've been working together for over 12 weeks now. It must be 14.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
sessions go quick, time goes quick.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, beautiful. So let's start with, if you can, just kind of recall what general daily life was like and what general daily life felt like, called 4 months ago.
Yeah. I think looking back when I was on your podcast before, I was in my garden actually, and it's winter now. So we're in a whole new season, right? It's like time keeps chugging on, seasons continue on.
Mhm.
And yeah, man, I think during that season, looking back 4 months ago, I was much more on autopilot, right? I think that's what I really like loved about working with you and sort of clicked for me was noticing where you're being conscious and where you're being unconscious. Um, and just starting that practice, right? Just being like, oh, cool, I'm operating consciously in this way. Or, I noticed something that might have triggered me in the past and now I'm more conscious around that and I don't have to be triggered. So, man, I think right away, first couple sessions, it was that awareness, practicing being conscious of your thoughts and how they're moving forward. And then, after that, it was like hard to turn off. I couldn't unrecognize it. Right. I was like, oh, cool. I was just being unconscious in that moment. That's where a lot of my suffering is coming from. So let's add some intention here and, make this something I really love.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, man, it's subtle,
Yeah.
but it's also night and day at the same time. That's kind of weird.
Yeah. I like the way you describe that. I feel like for anybody that really starts to focus in these areas with intention, there's a point you reach where you're like, okay, so this is just kind of how it goes. This is what we do, kind of deal. And it's cool though. It's cool. Like in the beginning, it's a little bit awkward, right? It's different. It's not the norm of how we have historically operated, how we've been conditioned to operate, right?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
more we do it, the more we're like, okay, I see why this is beneficial, you know. So in the beginning, and again, it's sometimes it could be challenging, right, to really embody the persona from a period of time ago, a particular period of time ago. But 4 months ago, do you feel, was there any level of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, like if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. Was there any level of like constriction or feeling confined at all, or no?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely. Like, so I think creatively, career-wise, um even in some relationships, right? Feeling like a little stuck, feeling like this is just the way and it sucks, or whatever the feeling is. Trying to think of some specific stuff. Like even with social media in the past, I'd be doing something on social media, I'd be having success, and then maybe just start to feel stuck in it, or just feel like this is what I have to do now, or people
Mm-hmm.
are expecting this. Like just kind of telling different stories in my mind that might cause some suffering. Um, and so it's a little bit difficult for me to say like, um, I've come such a long ways and I don't do that anymore, because I definitely still do that, right? I mean, I think that's what our minds do, is they kind of tell stories about things. They're here to protect us. They're here doing their thing. They're telling stories wherever they can. And I think I just wasn't able to check those stories in the past. Like, whoa, what story are you telling now, mind? Oh, wait a second. I don't know if I agree with that. Or that's okay. That's a story we've been telling for a long time. Let's replace that with something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, so just just realizing I have the ability to do that,
Yeah.
full game changer.
It's beautiful,
So
man, right? And I think from some perspectives, it's like challenging to see how something so simple could be so liberating. But I also feel like oftentimes, like in the past, we don't realize what kind of, the way I said it recently on a call today, I didn't realize what kind of a mental prison I was in before. Like if you came to me 6 years ago and said, "Hey, man, I've got a path that can like fucking liberate you in so many ways and increase your health and all this stuff, and you'll find freedom and clarity and peace." Like I at that point would be like, all right, well, I don't give a fuck about that. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't even looking at that.
yeah, yeah,
And so yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Right. So being in that moment, being yourself then is just like, you kind of don't know what you don't know. You're just kind of like, in the past, I just sort of been, you can sort of be in a mental prison and be happy with it in a way, as weird as that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even a prison can be cozy,
Mm-hmm.
but I think just recognizing that you've put yourself in that box, or you've put yourself in that situation with your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the unlock. It's like, oh yeah, no doubt. I'm just focusing on this right now, and it's causing me this feedback. And if I don't
Yeah.
want that feedback, I'll focus somewhere else or change that feeling.
Yeah, beautiful. Another thing that just popped in my mind, I was talking about yesterday, I think, a way to look at like where we are unconscious versus conscious. And I think about, well, one example is when you drive somewhere and you get there and you're like, how did that happen? Where did that time go? But also like just cleaning and doing daily tasks like vacuuming and wiping down the counters. I know
Mhm.
a past version of myself, like if I did that, first off, I didn't do it a lot because I was really, really lazy. But when I did do it, it was just like this thing that I did. And like, I just became unconscious. I didn't realize that's what it was, but it's like you just kind of become immersed in the thing. And then now when I do it, like I'm present with it. I got like my headphones on, I'm dancing,
Yeah,
I'm doing, like
yeah,
it's a different, or thinking about things I'm grateful for, not because I'm forcing it, just because that's just how it is now.
man. I think that's such a good way to describe it. Sort of just being bleh in the moment, or like just being bleh and doing the thing. Almost, I can relate and almost feel a little bit anxious or angry in a way of like, I gotta wipe the counter again.
Yeah.
you know it's kind of like those mundane things where you can dive into the bleh if you want, or you can dive into the, I'm happy, I'm just happy to be standing on my 2 feet and taking breaths right now, and this music that
Yeah.
I'm jamming is pumping me up, and man, I'm gonna be stoked when this kitchen's clean. Look at it already, it's already almost clean.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And the more that we say that kind of stuff to ourselves, the more we get on board with it. Because right, like in the beginning when you're saying stuff like that, I remember like when I first told myself in the mirror like, "Hey, you look good," or something like that, or "I love you," it was awkward. It didn't flow. It was not, it's the same as that, right? So in the moments that we try to tell a new story about whatever micro reaction or micro moment circumstance happens, and we're telling that new story consciously, but it doesn't feel real, well, you just keep doing it, and then down the road, it starts to feel real, and you start to get the benefits from it because it's all neuroplasticity. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and it depends on how long you've been cleaning the counters with a blah attitude. Like if that's the way you've been doing it for 50 years, it's going to take you a second to realize that there's another option.
yeah, and then also the recognition of like what other areas have I been blah in, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
just in these just patterns of unconscious reactions, you know. And it's the thing that we were never taught this. We were never taught this growing up. Hey, you should pay attention to what you think about and how you feel, you know, like
Yeah,
not at
yeah.
all, you know. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
pressure, get in the box, hustle and grind. But obviously all that's changing. So, well, to kind of pick up down the train of thought that I was initially intending, and I love the free flow that we have in our natural flow. But in terms of us working together, what would you say for you was the most beneficial aspect? Whether it's one or two things or whatever.
Yeah, I think we've touched on probably the most beneficial thing was just having that awakening, really. It's almost an awakening, dude. When I
Mm-hmm.
started with you, it was a yep. Whoa, I'm in the driver's seat. Let's start driving.
Yeah.
And then after that awakening, I think for me it was just kind of like we're doing now, having these free flowing conversations, seeing where our feelings going, being allowed to explore feelings in a way that is productive, safe, fun, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I think tying those things together, just like providing those tools really just, man, it's like we've touched on this in the past, but it's a breeding ground almost, dude. Your coaching sessions create a breeding ground for awareness of yourself, whether, however you apply it is how you apply it. So it's been really, I think just that awareness piece, man, is it's key. I never had it before. I feel like, I mean, it was there a little bit. It was, murmuring,
Yeah.
but I think diving into sessions, paying attention to it weekly, having tools, almost like, re-check-ins of like, hey, so how are your pattern thoughts going? Are you noticing more pattern thoughts? Which pattern thoughts are you leaning into or changing? And so, I think it's easy to do that by yourself, to be like, oh, there's a pattern thought, but it's not easy to come back and be like, are you still doing it? Are you still doing it? How's that
Mm-hmm.
going? Are there any
Mm-hmm.
more? What's it look like? Let's explore it. I think that's the real
Yeah.
work.
Hell yeah, dude. I agree completely. I think in that you illuminated it to like just having that outside, unbiased perspective from someone who has empathy and love for the experience and for the potential growth on the other side of
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. And you believe in that potential growth on the other side of it too, where probably even in the beginning, yeah, in the beginning, I was probably just like, had some hesitation of like, yeah, I believe this stuff that we're working on, but like, does my subconscious believe it? Does my
Hmm.
ego, can I get my ego to believe this stuff,
Right. Yeah. And so now, would you say that the deeper aspects of yourself are more on board with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting deeper and deeper. It's really cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah. 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 Right.
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 It's cool to see it to go from sort of like a little hesitation,
Yeah.
maybe a little doubt and kind of just like, we'll see where this goes, to like, you know, catching myself in these micro moments, dude, of like, oh,
Yeah.
I can go down a path of like frustration and anger, maybe, or whatever I want to go there, or, there's another option.
Yeah. 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 Amen. Yeah, dude. So that's the work, and it's like it's applying basically simple principles to whatever the situation is where we find resistance outside of ourselves. And, you know, to lean, as you know me, to lean a little bit into the metaphysical side of things, I think that there's a really, really good chance, and it's bananas to think about, but a lot of the science shows that it's possible that each individual person that lives on the planet, these same principles apply to them, to where whenever resistance occurs, no matter what the source is, it's literally made just for you. It's your unique lesson. It's your unique opportunity to learn something deeper about yourself and to let go of conditioned shame, judgment, fear, worry, concern, and to allow yourself to be more free, like in totality, right? But what I'll say is, like, if that's a challenging idea to get on board with, right? Like if someone's like, all right, that's a little woo woo. All right, cool. Well, even if you don't look at it woo woo, but you still approach life that way, hey, fuck it. Whenever I have a form of resistance, it's an opportunity to practice my awareness of my thoughts and my feelings. And that shit's super fucking important. So that's how I'm going to approach it, either way. But I love it, man. Okay, cool. So I have a question for you in terms of the foundation, because while on one side it's super simple to work, and on the other side you can say it's complex, but the principles that we're discussing right now, I feel, as you know from working with me, that there's certain foundational principles that are important to have in our life, in place in our life, to allow us to have a better shot at doing this work, to be more clear to do it. So in that category for you, do you think has yielded the most benefit to be able to allow you to do this sort of work?
Great question. That's a really good question. Like, what's
There's
the
no wrong
foundation?
answer. There's no wrong answer, and there's no time clicker thing going on. So feel
Yeah,
free to pause and reflect.
no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
Um, Man, the foundation of all this, I think, is openness.
Mm-hmm.
I have to remain open the whole time, just
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I don't know everything and anything could be true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, something popped into my mind of just recognizing that everybody we're here living on Earth with, we're all on the equal playing field. We're all the same. We're all made of the same stuff. We're all essentially doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so kind of not thinking, that I'm maybe better than anybody or no more or no less. I think that was part of it in a way that made me then realize and recognize and remember that this is a little woo-woo, but we are the universe experiencing itself.
Yeah.
Right. So we are all made up, every single person here. We're all made up of this divine, right? So we are this divine.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that divine in us that's observing what's happening here and now. So just remembering that I am also the observer at the same time I am in this body.
Yeah.
It's interesting how there's two distinctions like that. Like I can feel the observer there, kind of watching thoughts, watching emotions, but then there's also the person or the body experiencing the thoughts, experiencing the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of an unlock for me. It's very foundational just to be like, hey, these two are very true. And so it informs the rest of these practices.
Yeah. I love that. I look at that, you've probably heard me say before, right? The subconscious map of the world, our subconscious map of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that as like, that's in that category, the foundation for doing this work going forward conceptually, right? Like making it make sense for us in our minds is in that category of the subconscious map of the world, our understanding of what the fuck we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
Because when we look at like all of the pressure points and the pain points that we experience in adolescence, in large part, the worry and concern stems from an uncertainty of what the fuck we're doing here. Like we can say it's because dad said this or mom did this or what the fuck ever. But at the end of the day, it's because as a kid, we're like, what the fuck does this life mean? And we don't get straight answers. For most of us, we don't get straight answers that we really believe at a core level, right? So taking that time to look at it. And then, when you look at the science, I mean, more and more it shows that consciousness is fundamental and that this is some kind of a hologram kind of thing, but the depth of the conditioned mind, I think, is what often gets overlooked. It's been hinted at and noted at for fucking centuries and God knows how long, right? More than that. But it's so often underlooked. But I like what you said that, when you start going down this road and expanding, it continues to expand. And you're like, holy shit, this continues to go. And it does. You continue to learn yourself more and expand more. And it's fucking beautiful, dude. And that's so cool. So I love that. The foundation thing in the category of routine or physical foundation, you know,
Yeah.
or, material, like you could say, material perspective, habits, whatnot. Is there anything in that category that you would say is foundational to be able to do this work? There's no
Yeah.
wrong answer. I'm just curious what for you.
I
Curious for
know the
you.
answer you're looking for. I know the answer
Well,
you're
no,
looking
no,
for.
but like you know me, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things that you could say, right? There's plenty of
Yeah.
things that you could say that
Yeah.
for you specifically, was beneficial to have be a part of it. You know.
Right. Right. No, I mean, working with you, you have some great, I mean, again, this is the value of having a coach, dude. A mindset coach is to keep these sort of checks happening, maybe some tools. So something you know, were expressing, and a tool that you suggested was having a good morning and nighttime routine, which does help 1,000%. It does.
Mhm.
Having that clear mind in the morning and the evening, it's almost like a multiplier. It's almost like a multiplier on how much clarity you have, right? So if you wake up and you're busy and you're bringing in a whole bunch of information, your multiplier is at a 1. But if you sit for 30 minutes and you know, enjoy your coffee and smell the air, listen to the birds and chill out, your multiplier is then at a 20, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're having a really high energetic, really high vibes, right? Um so yeah, so that morning and the evening routine is key. I guess I say key, but also, you know, it's something that I've struggled with straight up. It's something that wasn't perfect right away, and it's something that I almost beat myself up about. But after working with you and coming back to it, it was like, hey, I'm actually doing a pretty good job. I wake up pretty chill. I have a nice good morning, you know. So um yeah, keeping those clear mornings is good.
Dude,
Um
that's beautiful. And,
on
and you
top of
know,
that, journaling. On top of
okay,
that, journaling too. You
yeah.
know, getting some thoughts out, voice notes, written notes if that's good. Um, Man, and then we could go deeper. You know, posting a bunch on YouTube. You encouraging me to do more social media. I've started a podcast recently, which launches real soon. So it's like it's all these things where I can put time and energy just to fuel myself. You know.
That's fucking amazing, man. And you were so right. Like when you were like, I know you're looking for something, you know, and the way you said it, you can tell like you feel it and it's real.
Yeah.
But you said it so perfectly, man. And the only thing that I would add into, which I know for you is inclusive in your idea of a mindful morning and evening routine, but probably part of the thing that can be challenging is the going to the screen at certain points, depending on
Yes.
varying whatever, right? And I just want to acknowledge that, yeah, that's a challenging fucking thing to do, man. Like, I mean, there was a point there where I was up until 2 a.m., sometimes 2:33, just scrolling on shit. And then I would wake up in the morning and roll over and blah, and then start scrolling for fucking an hour and a half or two. You know what I mean? Like it was, dude, for a while there. You know what I mean? So it took me a minute to curb that. I think that the easiest way for me that I did it was I associated nature with it. I was not in the house. I'm like, okay, I'm getting the fuck outside of the house and I'm not going to look at my phone when I do that. Right. And that makes
Nice.
it
Nice.
easier to do.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, just real quick, since we're here in this moment, for, the benefit of someone who might also relate to this, not necessarily yourself, because I know that you're doing it, you're on the path and you're making those adjustments, you're aware of it, right? But I recently partnered with a company, which is the first time I've it's the third time, but it's the first time I've really mentioned it on content yet, something, right? And the reason it is because it's blue blockers, right? And so the most important thing is the blue light exposure. But I think doubling down, it's also the content, right? But we set ourselves up for better sleep quality when we're mindful of our blue light indulgence, right? And the easy way, right? Just don't look at the screens, but easy way, because it can be challenging, right? And so I got these guys now.
Oh, snazzy.
So these are the daytime ones. So I'm actually wearing these a lot when I'm working on the computer. I'm entertaining starting to wearing them as like just all the time, even recording podcasts,
Dude, they fit.
because
They look
I
great.
do feel like it does make a difference. But I don't know if they can be distracting or not, so I chose not to wear them. But like for at night, what happens is you get these clip-ons, and so I put this on, and then so if you're someone at night and you're just on your phone, well, hey, at least wear these and you're blocking out like 99%. And they have different frames and stuff like that. This was not a planned plug, by the way, but the conversation took us that way. So I will put a link below for that.
Heck yeah.
But like I'm actually creating content for them too. And the way I'm doing it is like, again, my perspective, like let's do whatever we got to do to just get the screens gone in the first hour and last hour. But if you find it challenging, at least maybe entertain blue blockers. Might be
Man,
helpful. So
and I think the tip, and I don't realize I did it, is getting outside, uh, getting into nature, and that does sort of encourage you not to use your phone. I think that's what I was doing. Make my coffee, hop out into the garden, try to pay attention to the plants and the animals and
that's it.
whatever's happening out there instead of what's happening in my phone.
That's the best, dude. Just watching nature, whatever it
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
And
Letting
even
that
if it's like
sunlight hit your
someone
face.
lives, as I was going to say, even if someone lives like in a city or something and there's not quote unquote a lot of nature, I mean, you might see an occasional bird or just watch people walk around. Practice the art of not judging people when you do, if you have that, because that's something that I had to work with for a while, right? I'm just saying broad scope, anyone,
Yeah, yeah,
because
that's a
I
good
used to,
call.
if
I
I
could
would sit
practice
and
that.
watch people, I would judge the shit out of people. Like I'm just saying, I used to.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So,
That's a good practice. Let me write that down.
well, it's something to think about. Like just any time that you have judgment occur in your mind, it's an opportunity to redirect it and do a different thing, because that doesn't serve us, right?
Man, and I would say
Never
too,
does.
judgments are typically conditioned thought, like a
Yeah,
conditioned thought pattern that you have that you're just kind of placing on someone else.
that's it.
So maybe
That's
you
it.
need to question that. Yeah,
Yeah. That's it.
it's sick. I love
It's
it.
like from one perspective, it's all conditioned thought. It's just a
Yeah,
question of who did the conditioning. Was it unconsciously done or consciously done? You know?
man, that's so interesting how I can see a past version of myself spending a bunch of energy judging somebody else, and I might even get tired from it. Might even get kind of like a little upset or angry.
Yeah. It's a pattern, man. It's a pattern. And I think even deeper than that, it's a pattern of community for a lot of people, because we grew
Yeah,
up around other people that have the same patterns, and it was a way to communicate gossip, you know. And yeah, but it's just like there's that's never a benefit. I think it's Eleanor Roosevelt that said like average minds talk about people,
mm,
or something, and it goes up to like great minds talk about ideas, and this. But anyhow,
that's right.
I'm
That's right.
paraphrasing,
No, you're
but
right. Yeah, something like that.
that idea is in that, whatever the actual quote is. That idea is there. There's just no benefit. It's a conditioned pattern of different levels of unconscious reasoning why it's there, but it's a conditioned pattern.
Man, I think that right there highlights the key benefit of working with you, because now I can do this in my day to day of like, oh, we're having conditioned thought. But when I first started, I don't even think looking at me judging somebody else wouldn't be maybe like something that I would want to change. It's like, it's just something I do. It's something everyone does, or
It's normal. It's part of life.
it's normal. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me unhappy. But in reality, like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, fuck
Right.
it does.
Right. Yeah.
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 So just taking the opportunity to look at each section like that, like literally, like, can I judge this person on the park bench? Probably shouldn't. Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt.
Yeah. Right. Dude, I'm telling you, man, there's something to it. It's just like the clarity. I had Dr. John DeMartini on my podcast once and talked to him about this, and his knowledge. He uses some words where I still haven't fully understood the words he uses, but I've looked them up. Like, okay, yeah. But talking to him about judgment and stuff, and like how it negatively affects us, and obviously he's not the only source of that information, but it also just makes sense when you look at what energy do you want to be in? What energy feels the best? But I think we've also been unconsciously conditioned to avoid being liberated, to avoid actually being the person who is always happy, because I know a historical version of me, like, I'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? He's always fucking smiling and shit, but that's also conditioned narrative, and fucking shit. It doesn't take too long, right? You look at Think and Grow Rich, number one self-help book of all time, or one of the top selling self-help books of all time. And the principles in that are the same thing. It's just the few that do it are the ones that realize it, and whether someone works with a coach or not, I think that I'm going off on a tangent here. I think that one of the main benefits of working with a coach that has a decent level of awareness to notice these patterns is to be able to extract unconscious patterns that we don't see. And I think that is something that continues to be the case. I continue to seek counsel for that reason, because we always have spots that we aren't looking at, but in the beginning, when someone is just getting going doing this stuff, like you've pointed out, now that you've been doing it for a while, you kind of get it, and you're able to like integrate it in deeper aspects of your life. Is there potentially still things that maybe you're not seeing? Yes, but you're seeing so much, and it's plenty for you to look at and work with, right? So it's like, why not take the reins for a little while and see what happens, sort of deal. But I think that that's one of the biggest benefits. If the individual is truly present with them, they're truly acting from a place of service and empathy and care, and yeah, they don't have a bias. They're just trying to fucking help, right? Like, I think that that's the prerequisite. I know that was a lot of words that I just kind of threw. You gotta like sit back. I think he's just gonna keep going, so I don't even gotta talk anymore. We'll just let him go.
Oh man.
And I could, obviously.
Yeah. trying to see some feelings or some reactions that are coming up. I'm just in such a I'm in such a space of just like, I think just chillness and freedom here. Because when I get with you, it's almost a reminder of like, oh yeah, we can put our intention wherever we want it. We can sort of, tell the story as it unfolds. So,
yeah. Amen to that, man. Yeah. And the freedom in allowing there to be empty space.
Yeah.
In conversation,
Oh yeah.
And I know that for me, like when I first started my podcast, I know that one of the podcasts you're talking about, it's like you and your buddy hanging out, which is amazing. I want to listen to it. But when you're doing like an interview podcast and you first start out doing an interview podcast, there's the aspect of the self that wants to be efficient, dialed in, not missing no dead air, always got the next fucking thing to say kind of deal,
Yes. Yes.
But more and more I've embodied that ability to just be still without any words. And the thing is, a historical version of myself in those moments, I would get like a little flush red. My face would like flush up a little bit. Like at the end of me talking there, and then you didn't say anything and it was dead silence, I think my face would have been like, like, but it's like, I'm just, present. It doesn't mean I don't go off on my tangents, because clearly I do. But yeah.
Yeah, we're just leaving the space be. And I think it's something that I've learned recently for myself, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking a moment to provide your insights, from working with me, and kind of give like a feel for, it's interesting that the first podcast we did not know we were going to work together. Yeah. We had an interaction on TikTok, and then you were on board with coming on. I think part of it was because you have a relationship with cannabis, and you had this level of awareness, some level of an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares about the adjective? At that point, and we just like, hey, let's get on and do a podcast. And then we ended up beginning to work together. So but it's still cool to have you back, so that not only yourself, but anyone else could go back and listen to. And you go back and you listen to the other Heathrow.
Yeah.
Still this Heathrow. It's the same fucking guy. It's not that it was not good. It's not that he wasn't fun to listen to or entertaining or anything. But I will say, from my perspective, I sense a difference in your presence on this podcast versus the previous one.
Oh,
So
thanks, man. Yeah, it's interesting to think about how I'm a different person since the first time we recorded. It's nice. It's nice.
hell
Yeah,
yeah,
I've done
dude.
a whole bunch of shit since we started together. I started posting on YouTube more, got back into that, like really diving into social media more.
Yeah,
And then I had all these people in my life, you, a couple other people being like, "Yo, you should start a podcast. You have an interesting voice. I could listen to you talk." I was like, "Oh, interesting." A couple other people have said it, and I was like, well, funny enough, me and my best friend have had a podcast idea for like 10 years.
yeah.
And yeah, finally got like a little setup together, a mic, some, the setup, and we're gonna do it. So
Nice, dude. So,
yeah.
are you going to do like a once a week deal, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, we're aiming for every Sunday. We'll release an episode every Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
probably like hour long, 45 minutes to an hour, where we just kind of talk about whatever topics come up. A little bit of free flow off the top of the head, and yeah.
Okay, cool. Hell yeah, dude. I love that. Is it
Yeah,
going to
it's fun.
be like this, where you guys are separate, or are you going to be live together?
Yeah, we're gonna be separate. We're gonna be two talking heads, so we're using the same setup. And
Okay.
he's at his house, I'm at my house, but we've got some ideas for the future where we can like, maybe get together in the same room or go on a field trip or do something kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Hell yeah. I think that that's the best way to do it. Is just say, "Fuck it, man. I can start a podcast. I don't need a room and a mic and all this stuff. I can just start one and just do virtual." Because ever since 2020, like,
Yeah.
hey, that's a thing, and
Oh,
people continue
totally.
to do it. And I was listening to a podcast recently, following a content creator that has good insight with scaling and content creation, and they were talking about, God, what was it that brought this thought up? Yeah, that's right. They started out doing it this way. They started out with just the digital heads, and now they have what you would presume would be a polished studio. But I think, right, for a lot of us,
Right.
we're like, well, if I'm going to start a podcast, I got to do all this stuff. Like, nah, maybe spend a little bit on a computer and a mic, and then you're
Yeah.
good to go.
No, dude, it's great. Our it's really interesting. Our podcast is called Podcast Material, kind
Okay,
of covering anything.
I love
Podcast Material podcast.
it. I love it.
And our one of our first episodes here is how do you even record a podcast?
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, what is that like? Trying to
Yeah,
figure out how to record a podcast and digging into it. And we touched on that of like, I think we almost stopped because it was like, well, how do we even do it? We don't have any professional equipment, we don't have any stuff, but like the whole thing is we just started.
yeah,
So just here we are, and like
that's it.
what's popping up? Like, what do we need to do now? Right? Oh, we need a logo. Oh, we need a jingle. Oh, we need a couple different things. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, hell yeah,
Um,
dude. I love that, man. Now, wasn't there also another idea for a podcast as well?
totally. So after doing this work with you and just kind of this work in general for the past year, is just like there's so many things I want to do, and I wasn't really allowing myself to do them before, just because maybe I thought I couldn't. Like for the podcast, for instance, it was like, what business do I have recording a podcast? Right? It's actually another podcast episode. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so it's like I think just questioning all these patterns of like, why wouldn't I do these things? So before we started, I had a few projects going, but now I feel like, man, I've got like 12 projects up in the air, just kind of boiling and going, and it feels
Yeah,
awesome. It feels really fun.
I'm glad you said that, man. That kind of framing is a common narrative, and where I had it was my first coach said, "Hey, man, why don't you offer coaching to these people
Yes.
that comment on your videos?" And my gut shot response was, "Who am I to coach people?" And he
Yes.
said, "Who are you not to?" And it's a great redirect. So, who
Right.
are you not to record a podcast, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that, like, if you have a unique voice and a unique perspective, and in my opinion, you have some level of mindfulness and reflecting on your journey, and you're trying to grow in some way, then,
Yeah.
dude, there are people out there that will fuck with you, that vibe with you, that will like to hear your version of the story. Your version of the story of life, your story of life.
Yeah.
right? And your perspective. Not
Oh man,
everybody
that's
is going
totally
to
it.
be Mr. Beast or whatever, but it's not about that. It's about, like, from my perspective, finding your tribe. Like you
Yeah.
and I worked together for uh, basically 4 months, I think, or yeah, 4 months consecutively, consistently, and now we're kind of in this pause space, but we're not done though. Like, we're still friends. You know what I mean? Like, we're
Yeah.
doing a podcast, hanging out together. We'll hop on and do catch up calls and shit, but it's not like, yeah, you're part of my family now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are an
Yeah.
extension of me, and I'm so thankful to have you in my life. So I think that whether someone offers a coaching, and I know that you're also doing that as well, but
Yeah.
whether someone offers coaching or not, yeah, man, there's just so much benefit in sharing your message, and then recognizing, right, any resistance to being seen is just an old story, either in the mind or the body. So,
Yes. Yeah, dude. Again, right. Right. No, so doing this work has really just enabled me to flip all these switches of like, dang, I've always wanted to be, not always, but like, yeah, hell yeah. I love the idea of being a podcaster. I love the idea of being a social media influencer in the garden. I love
mhm.
the idea of coaching people in some capacity.
Yeah,
um I love the idea of working online. I'm just open to anything because I see people doing stuff and I'm like, hey, if you can do it, I know that I can too. There's not
yeah,
really, there's
that's
not
it.
there, there's, it's monkey see monkey do in my mind a little bit when it comes to things like that, like physical stuff. It's like whatever, I can figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I think
So
that another area that we've been conditioned in is like, oh, I don't want to be either oh, I don't want to be an influencer, or oh, I don't know how I feel about so many people seeing my face, or something like that.
right.
But the reality is, like, there's so many people out there. I know I've listened to so many podcasts and just randomly discovered someone and been like, holy shit, this person is amazing to listen to. They have so much information. And then you
Yeah.
look and you go, oh, fuck, they have a shit ton of followers and they have content everywhere, but you've never fucking heard of them. If you saw them down the street, you probably wouldn't know them, right? Like, there's so many people out there that are having an impact, living a life of service in some way. Their company, their mission, their purpose, their drive is in some way in the element of service. And there's many ways to do that. But just building it from the ground up and cultivating emotional resilience along the way. And now that we have content creation, it's just like, why not? And I think that also, like, to your point earlier, the power of journaling is beneficial. Somehow implement it, right? But video journaling and uploading your process and going back and looking at the videos you made and reflecting and seeing the growth and stuff, like, there's so much growth that happens from that.
Yeah, man. It's kind of mysterious actually how when you put something outside of your body like that, maybe it's like a thought or a creative piece or a worry or whatever it is, you put it outside your body, it like becomes something different. For
Yeah,
me, I like don't need to carry it anymore in a way. It's still something maybe I love or something I fear or something I don't want or whatever it is, but like, man, if I can just like put it out there, whether it be a voice note, a video, writing, it just doesn't have to live inside my body anymore, I guess.
yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that's we've been conditioned to is to cling on to shit, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in reality, it's like, this too shall pass is always true.
Right.
The things that come into our life that we're able to, that are beautiful, that we can love and hold on to and stuff, and grow with for lengthy periods of time, are great, and they're a part of the journey too. But I just think that in general, when it comes to, like, life trajectory and what someone is doing in their daily life, there's just so much unconscious constriction, which is just all the old stories. And man, the more we liberate ourselves from that, the more we can actually live a free life and serve more people that way. And I think that's what it's all about. My content is changing gradually with time, but also rapidly, to just be more free. And just, yeah, this just free. I don't know how to describe it, but just free and service. It's just about service. Like, I make content, everything I'm doing is so that I can serve more people. And I think that a historical version of myself would be like, well, you're just trying to make more money. And I think that that's also why it's taken a while for me to get to the space where I'm actually beginning to actively, put intent into scaling, is because of that old story. And while I recognized it was there, I also recognized it was kind of deep. I just kind of let it be there and just continue to get. But now I'm in that space where it's like, that's not it. And if you think that, that's fine, because now it's like it's deep. It's deep in the bones, right?
Yeah.
You know, so
I think it's a good touch to like, if you have a pre-patterned thought that is deep and you recognize that it's deep,
mhm.
it's okay. It's okay to just let it be for a little bit.
Yeah, it'll come along if you're practicing the areas and the
Dude,
other where you can work and you see it like, okay, that'll change. It's all right. Eventually it'll lock into place too. Or
an
you'll
old
get to a
version of
space where you're
myself
able to. Yeah,
an old version of myself wants to beat me up for that, to be like, hey, you should, we know that this is a conditioned thought. We know that maybe it's not serving us the best. We should get in there and dig deep into it. And you're kind of a piece of shit for not.
yeah,
Right.
right. And that's just old. That's just old.
Yeah,
That right
that's more
there
of
is
it.
just that's
Yes,
the
yes.
old. Yeah. So that's not. We don't need to look at that. I understand that. We don't need to look at that.
Yeah.
The real
But it's
story
cool.
is.
It's cool to let that be, to be deep rooted there. Like if it is a deep rooted pattern, it's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
And that's something it took me a couple weeks to be like, oh, I'm noticing a deep rooted pattern. I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful that I can even notice it and look at it.
Yeah.
And as time goes on and as I uncover these patterns,
Yeah.
the roots of this pattern will become more obvious, and I think it'll slowly be able to uproot itself rather than trying to rip out a giant root. That's
Yeah.
gonna not be
Yeah,
possible, maybe.
and I think that this can show itself in a lot of different areas, but one of the places that's most common is when it's with a interpersonal relationship that relationship has depth. And so if there's a belief or a
Yes.
reaction logged in the body or something, that's been there for a minute in association with that's deep, and oftentimes, like I have a client that I've been working with for a while, and man, he's expanded so much growth in his time, but he has still, been living with his parents. Been in college for a while, plays sports, super smart kid. He's not a kid, he's a fucking man. But yeah, it's challenging to practice awareness when you're living in the house of the majority of the matriarchal and patriarchal energy that you've adopted in your life to
Yeah.
make shifts. It makes it more challenging,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
to do it. So I think that's kind of something to think about, is like, depending on what it is,
Yeah.
certain things that are deeper patterns, and we recognize they're deeper patterns, that
Yeah.
when they emerge, it is kind of hindering the state. If we have the ability to leave, then we should leave. And I've told him a few times, like, hey man, maybe you just, get a van and fucking leave and figure it out and go learn about yourself. Because I tell you what, you're going to find some resistance on that path. You're going to find a fuck ton of resistance on that path. We know that, but you're
Yeah.
going to grow through it. You're going to grow through it if you're, or surf couches, go find rooms to rent, but there's a little bit of the, how much of ourselves is sticking with a certain dynamic, whether it's like living with parents or being in a relationship that doesn't necessarily serve us anymore. How much of us is staying in it because of these unconscious creature comforts? Whether it's how the person makes us feel at certain times, but not all times, or yeah, the home that we live in, and man, to shake this up would shake everything. Hey man, maybe that's maybe it's what you need, But I get it's challenging, and so what I'll tell him is like, you're still doing it, and he's still growing, but it's a more gradual process because he's constantly exposed to it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think giving some grace there for sure.
yeah,
Giving some space to be like, hey, this is a big one. So,
yeah,
it's going to be gradual, which, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's it.
It's a freeing thought. It's a freeing feeling to be like, hey, cool, cool. Because
Yeah.
again, I think when I started this, I was like, cool, I'm bringing more awareness, but I could almost not turn it off. Right. Where I was like, dang, okay, I'm noticing a lot of conditioned thought. And it sort of like made me feel worse at first, almost,
Mm-hmm.
to just be like, damn, I've kind of like got a lot of patterns here. But like, so does fucking everybody.
But yeah,
Like,
well, right,
it's how we
and
operate.
then therein again, right, is another. Well, that's a judgmental perspective that just emerged about this, and so I know that this is paradoxical and whatnot, but I can still say the same thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, this is the nature of life. The thing is, most people don't look at it either because of unconscious walls that are built around fear or worry or concern about what other people will think. Like that's it.
Dude, it's that cozy prison a little bit we talked about in the beginning. Is like you can make a confined space for yourself that can feel comfortable. That
Hmm.
can be like, I don't want anything to change because I don't know what will happen.
Yeah,
But you're not really happy now.
yeah,
So maybe change some things and you probably will. You can
yeah,
be.
yeah. Amen. It's all about cycles. All right. Well, now I'm curious with your content creation because it's been a couple weeks since we've hung out,
Yeah.
and just your direction of what's going on. Is there anything that project wise you have either in front of you on the horizon that you're excited about?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
man. I
outside of the
mean,
podcast, right? We talked about that, but
yeah. I mean, so my bread, my where I'm having a lot of fun now is on TikTok. I'm
mhm.
Heathrow's Garden on TikTok. I love sharing my garden, and
Yep.
I've got so many, man. I've got bubbling ideas. I really feel like food is so important for the world, man.
Hmm.
And if people can grow their own food, or if certain individual neighborhoods or plots can grow a shit ton of food for their neighborhood, and this can be something that's adopted all over.
Yeah.
I got a lot of cool ideas around how basically educating and teaching people that food and plants are super abundant, and they're not necessarily as difficult or as like scarce as we've been taught to believe. It's all super abundant. You could grow a garden right now. It wouldn't be very hard.
Hell yeah.
um, so I'm super into that. I love sharing the gardening, spreading the gospel of gardening.
Yeah.
Um, then I've been on YouTube for a while. I'm a carpenter. I create a lot of stuff. I build, I tinker, I do a lot of hands-on stuff. And yeah, diving in more on YouTube, posting more DIY stuff, builds, educational. I love to teach. So,
Dude,
you
I
know,
love that.
yeah,
I fucking
yeah,
love all of that. Especially because of the freedom to dance around and do different stuff. And I know we've talked about that
totally.
some, but I think that's another thing that unconsciously blocks people from beginning to create content because they feel at a deeper
Mm,
level that they have to be an expert at one thing or do one thing. When in reality, like if you're not an expert at something, all you really got to do is just explore stuff and share your process of exploring it and just have fun with it and document your journey of being a person. And then in the process
dude,
of
totally.
doing that, you'll learn stuff and develop skills where at some point someone's probably going to be like, "Hey man, can you help me with this?" Kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that's the new model going forward if you allow it to be so, in this world that we live in, at least from my perspective.
Oh man, I agree with you. And it can be hard to figure out. I think there's a lot of conflicting information, or maybe things that just work better for other people. It
Yeah.
works better to niche down for some. And I have a little bit with Heathrow's Garden,
Mm.
kind of showing just my garden, but I'm realizing as I share more content and do more different things that I think people who are there for Heathrow's Garden, shout out by the way, what's up, Spuddies? They're there for Heathrow. So it doesn't matter if Heathrow's building a pottery studio, or if Heathrow is, picking up his yard, or if Heathrow is cleaning out his van or getting a coffee. It's just stuff that people want to be a part of or to learn, or yeah. I think
It's
sharing my
you.
story, to me, my story might kind of feel like maybe like common sense almost, like, oh yeah, everyone knows how to do XYZ, or but no, man, people really just want to see someone else do it. It's kind of
It's you, dude. It's you, dude. How
mhm,
many how many
mhm.
people out there are creating content around gardening? There's plenty of
Right,
them. But
right.
when people stop when they see yours, it's because it's you. You know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And there's
So
just so much to share. I can it can be easy to overlook the things to share because it's all really simple for me, like building. So I've learned how to be a carpenter, and it takes me a moment to be aware and be like, oh yeah, a past version of myself would be like, how do you do this?
hmm
How does somebody use tools, or how does somebody build a building? So it's like just sharing those small things, I'm reminded constantly that like all the stuff I've learned, I can just share and just kind of recap, and people can find
Yeah.
it beneficial.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talking on podcasts around content creation saying themes is the way to go. And I think me and you may, or you and
Mm,
I may have talked about that, right? Where it's like, for me, I think that my underlying core is our ability to find freedom within our mind, right?
hmm hmm
But the themes that I have could be expansion of consciousness with cannabis,
hmm
or relationships, or career
hmm
path, or handling stress and depression. There's so many different things that I could talk about that would be in alignment with my theme, which is really just centered around my life and what I'm doing and how I'm living, and I just think that that's it. So, whatever it is that you feel inspired to create, right? Like, I love that you're doing the carpentry videos and that you're also doing the gardening. You're going to mix it up, but right, like, if you have one day where you're like, I'm going to go buy a train set and put it together, and we're going to take you on the process. Like, fuck
Yeah,
yeah, do
yeah,
that too,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the whole thing. Hell yeah.
yeah, for sure, man. Thanks. And I
Dude, my
think
pleasure.
I wasn't necessarily serious about social media, but so when I first started, maybe 6 months ago, Heathrow was toying with the idea of like social media could be fun. Maybe there's some benefit. So kind of a side project or a hobby. But I think diving into work with you and questioning my resistance to it and reprogramming those answers has just sent me on like a springboard of content creation, because now there's not as much resistance. Well, the resistance still pops up, but I'm sprinting towards that resistance. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, perfect. There's some resistance here. Let's do it. Ooh, I think this is cringe. Let's post it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, man, it's,
Dude, I think that last time we talked, we kind of talked about this. I believe that it's like, it's in your being now that you document and share. But is there potentially times in your future where you might take little breaks, right? Or you might step back a little bit or whatever? Like, yeah, but do I think that there's a chance that there will ever be a time that you won't at some point still do a video and like catch up? Like, no, because I think that it's part of who you are now, same as it's part of who I am. And for me, I recently have been feeling more in alignment to create content than ever. But I've also been, as I told you, right, like focused on this marketing thing that I'm doing and actually really setting intention on the scaling piece. And that's kind of taken up a bulk. But in that, I think it's going to liberate so much more content. And so I'm right there with you, dude. I'm going to be a content machine this year. I just have been really focused on this like initial steps of getting going, and a lot of it's been the changing of the message, because of the way I've operated, the way that I suggest just talking about whatever. I don't have. We talked about the offer thing before. What do you put below your thing, and I don't fucking know, So I hired a team to be like, look at me and get the feel, and then they're like, well, how about these ideas? And I'm like, okay, that works for you, that works for me, and now it's set and forget. And it's just, and I could obviously dive deeper into that. But just to illustrate, I'm with you, like, and I'm so thankful that you have reached that space, and you found that liberation, and you continue to find it in your daily life. It's so cool.
yeah, thanks so much, man. I'm right in the right spot that I need to be, and it sounds like you are too with your stuff. It's like, it's a constant sort of ebb and flow for me a little bit of like, yeah, oh, I'm fired up, I'm diving in, I'm diving deep, I'm no filter, and then to sort of back up a little bit and maybe take a little bit of a break and maybe do sort of I almost call it like a content audit a little bit. Like,
Yeah, reflect.
why don't I watch my content and see how it makes me feel? And
Mm-hmm.
do I want this content moving forward? Do I want it to be different? Do I want it to be the
Yeah,
same? Do I, so
hell yeah.
so hell yeah, man, it's fun. It's interesting to observe and look at and play with, and now I find myself in this situation where I've got 5 or 6 different plates spinning, and now I just kind of, whichever one's kind of catching my attention at the moment is the one that I'll play with.
Dude, I love that, man. I love all that. All right, so to bring us to a fold again, thank you so much for spending time here, man, with me today and sharing space and sharing your journey. Not
Yeah.
only that, on Valentine's Day, which happens to also be your birthday,
Oh heck yeah. Oh heck yeah.
your B day. So that's good stuff. But I have a final question for you, and then when we wrap it up, maybe we can spend 2 seconds
Mm-hmm.
together after that.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people ask questions like this at the end of the podcast, and this kind of just came to me. But I think generally it would be something like, if you could tell a 10-year ago version of yourself, two or three things, and you could only tell them two or three things, what would you tell them? But I want to add to that, um, recognizing that you are extremely happy with how things have led to this point, because if they didn't happen, you wouldn't be where you are. But if we could think about, what would be two things that that version of yourself would benefit from? We're not going to go tell them, but what would be two things that they would benefit? Two insights, two perspective shifts, whatever. One, two, three, doesn't
Man.
matter.
Yeah. Okay. 2015 Heathrow. I'm feeling this guy for a second. Yeah, I think for 2015 Heathrow, I'm just gonna say you can have anything you want, man. And it sounds okay. Yeah, quick sentence. You can have anything you want, and it sounds silly, and you probably don't agree. But the truth is, you really can. Anywhere you put your intention, that will come to you, and believe it. Like I know that you think that, I know that you think it's possibly true, but it is true.
Mm-hmm.
So do that.
Yeah,
Believe
yeah,
it. Believe it. Believe it. Believe it. Believe it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
me today too. Believe that. Believe that. It's really true.
yeah. Hell yeah.
Um, and then again, you have everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
You're safe.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
Ooh, that gives me a good one to bring up real quick. A wonderful affirmation that I heard that I think is really, really good for a lot of people is and there's, I guess you could say it in different orders. I've always had enough. I have enough now, and I will always have enough.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the
Yeah.
sneak there is, oftentimes we feel, well, I don't know if I'm going to have enough money, or I don't know if I'm going to have enough this, blah, 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 blah. But like the reframe is, well, if you think about it, despite all the times that you may have had worries in the past, you're still here. So you've had enough to be here, whatever that means. We don't need to think about, you've had enough to where you're still fucking here. So we can say that you've always had enough, you have enough now, and we can say you're going to continue to have enough because that's what we've seen be the case, right? So while it may
Totally.
not be what the ego desires, saying that affirmations help, those types of affirmations helps to loosen it up so that you can get to where want to go, your desires.
Right. Right. Yep. Yep. Loosening that up just to be like, hey, you have everything you need, and sort of practicing that. And then the same type of affirmation I've been using recently is just I'm always in the right spot, right? I'm always where I need to be in life. I've never been in a place where
Yeah,
I'm here right now. It's you know,
that's super good, man. Like the more that we affirm something like that to ourselves,
right.
the more our subconscious mind and central nervous system adopt that level of peace,
Yep.
which contributes to more clarity, mental acuity, and emotional resilience. Just
Man, totally.
So it's like, I think that affirmations for a long time got a bad rap, and I'm sure I've said this before, and it makes sense because of how they've been portrayed. But we can't just put them on our wall and walk by them every day. We have to train our mind to feel them,
Mm-hmm.
train our mind to adopt them. And there's, depth to that. So it's not just right. Like I always envision someone like going out their door. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm happy. I'm wealthy. Today's a good day. Okay. Got it. Move, right. Like that's not how you do it. So, well, dude, thank you so much again for hanging out. And if it's cool with you, we'll hang out for 2 more seconds
Hell yeah.
after this.
Phil,
And
thank you for having me. I appreciate I like being here. Thanks a lot.
well, I like that you like being here, and I'm certain that we'll do it again. It'll be cool to check back in with you, whatever it is, a few months down the road, and see what's new and developing in your story. Maybe sooner. Who knows? I love hanging out with you too, brother. So hell
Yeah.
yeah. For everybody else that's been hanging out, thank you so much for hanging out. And if you want to learn more about stuff and things, you can go down below, and there's probably some stuff and things there for you.